Hey.
What you want to say about the baby?
Baby.
As we speak, authorities are searching the woods behind the home of 4-year-old Javaya Harris. I have just confirmed moments ago that agency is the Aiken County Sheriff's Office.
And you're Ethan Hunter there on the scene live. Ethan, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, we just came out here to get some updated video of the memorial, check out the house, talk to some neighbors, but I pulled up and found investigators here, crime scene taping the house off once again. I'll have you take a look behind me here. You can see it. The memorial is still up right there, but investigators have come to the house, crime scene taped off the yard, and are going back into the woods there.
Some years, the cases come one at a time. This year, they came in a procession. It began in February in Tucson. Nancy Guthrie, a mother whose son millions of people watch on television, vanished from her own home in the small, silent hours when nothing is supposed to happen. Whoever took her moved like smoke. 5 months later, her family is still standing in the doorway of that question, waiting for someone to walk back through it. Then April. Lynette Hooker had spent 10 years living a dream most of us only scroll past, sailing the world with her husband, one horizon at a time. Somewhere in the warm waters off the Bahamas, that dream ended. She went overboard. He was the only witness. And when investigators pulled the location data from his own phone, it told a different story than the one he'd told them. Her body has never come home. 2 women, 2 families learning that grief without answers isn't grief at all. It's suspension, a life paused mid-sentence. But this story, the one we're telling today, sits between those 2. And it's harder than both of them. Because in South Carolina, on an ordinary summer evening, a 4-year-old girl was reported missing from her own backyard. And it was her parents who made the call. Understand what that means. They dialed the number themselves. They stood in front of cameras with tears on their faces. They described her so precisely it broke your heart, right down to the pink beads in her hair, the little Crocs on her feet. And for 4 days, hundreds of strangers, deputies, FBI agents, volunteers who'd never met her, walked thousands of acres of Carolina heat, praying they'd find a frightened little girl before the dark did. They never had a chance. Because according to investigators, by the time that 911 call was placed, before the first searcher laced a boot, before the first drone lifted off, she had already been gone for a month. A month. Every acre searched, every prayer whispered outside that church at sunrise, every billboard carrying her face down the highway. All of it was built on top of a story that only 2 people in the world could verify. The same 2 people who reported her missing. The same 2 people who saw her last. Tonight, we're going to sit with the question almost no one covering this case wants to hold for longer than a headline. If she was already gone, why stage a search at all? What does it take? What has to happen inside a person for 2 parents to describe their daughter's hair beads to detectives, knowing she is never going to be found? We're going to walk through everything that's known. The timeline that wouldn't hold still. The neighbors who couldn't remember the last time they'd seen her. The second investigation running quietly beneath the first. And we're going to get as close to an answer as the evidence, and only the evidence, will allow. But first, listen to her father's own account of that day. Listen closely, because investigators did. Just before 9 on the night of Tuesday, June 30th, 2026, a woman called Aiken County 911 from a home near Hillsborough Street, South Carolina. Her 4-year-old daughter had been playing outside by the chicken coop, she said. She stepped inside to cook dinner. When she came back out, the girl was gone.
Where was she in the house when you saw her last?
No, she wasn't in the house, ma'am. She been playing outside today. And
Okay.
she asked me, can she play for a little bit more before it got dark? And I said yes. And I literally, her bath water is in the tub, ran, and dinner is cooking, and I came out here to get her, and I can't even find her.
The caller was Mitchell A. Herring, 22 years old and 39 weeks pregnant. The missing child was her daughter, Javaya Harris. That call triggered one of the largest searches Aiken County has ever mounted. Helicopters, drones, search dogs, more than 200 first responders, the FBI. 4 days, 5,000 acres. All of it for a small girl in pink Minnie Mouse pajamas. None of it ever had a chance. Not because they searched the wrong places, because of when the call was made. Sheriff Marty Sawyer would put it in one sentence. It was already too late to save her the moment the 911 call came in. The evidence showed Javeayah had been dead for at least a month, and the arrest warrants contain a date that turns this case from a tragedy into something else entirely. June 8th. That's when her remains were disposed of. 22 days before her mother dialed 911. 22 days of ordinary life, groceries, work shifts, a nursery prepared for a new baby, then a phone call describing a child playing outside that evening, down to the beads in her hair. Investigators would need just 4 days to take that story apart. What they found at the end of it, 80 miles away, is why this sheriff, 37 years on the job, couldn't finish his sentences at the podium. What changed? The sit with that timeline instruction is gone. The June 8th date now does the work itself. This is the story of roadmap ending violated your no premature summary rule, so it's replaced with 2 forward loops, the 4-day takedown and the unexplained 80 miles away tease, which pays off in Chapter 8 without naming what was found. Every repeated beat, they never had a chance of finding her alive, / allegedly knew would never be found, was collapsed into a single statement. The 911 call is public now. The sheriff's office released it on July 6th, and it rewards close listening. On the recording, Herring walks the dispatcher through the backyard, the chicken coop, the places her daughter usually plays. When the dispatcher asks whether Javeayah has any health issues, Herring mentions autism, a condition no doctor had ever diagnosed. Remember that detail. Within days, it would put her account and the father's directly at odds. Deputies flooded the property that night. A drone unit went up. Javaya Harris arrived home from what he described as a laundry run to find his street full of police, and assumed, he later said, that his girlfriend had gone into labor. He was half right. That same night, hours after reporting one child missing, Mitchell A. Herring gave birth to another. Weigh what that single night contained. A missing child report investigators now call false, a full law enforcement deployment, and a delivery room. One family. A few hours. By 11 the next morning, the FBI, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, and the Highway Patrol had taken the field. The machine was fully assembled. If you follow cases through the record, warrants, hearings, verdicts, not rumors, subscribe now. This case already has a courtroom date, and we'll be covering it when it lands. Because what that machine spent the next 4 days doing, and what it was quietly doing at the same time, are 2 different stories. Only one of them was visible. The search was total. Bethel Baptist Church became the command post, open before sunrise every morning, feeding crews coming in and out of the July heat. A local restaurant owner, Alok Kumar Akse, of Taj of Aiken, cooked and delivered 60 meals to searchers on July 4th. An advertising company put Javeayah's face on digital billboards across the county. Deputies ran roadblocks and searched vehicles. Residents were told to check sheds, crawl spaces, ditches. By day 3, 200 first responders, helicopters, drones, K-9 units, 5,000 acres. The FBI didn't just send manpower. It deployed its behavioral analysis unit and its child abduction rapid deployment team. Specialists, reserved for cases the Bureau already suspects, are not what they appear to be. Because 2 things about this search were wrong from the start. There was no Amber Alert. When residents demanded to know why, the sheriff's office said the criteria weren't met. When volunteers offered to join the ground search, the agency turned them away. It couldn't risk someone untrained missing a clue, or destroying one. That word choice sounded like caution. It was crime scene management. And then the neighbors said out loud what the search parameters already implied. Reporters canvassing Hillsborough kept hitting the same answer. House after house. Months. Nobody had seen Javeayah in months. On a block where everyone knew everyone's kids, a 4-year-old had vanished from daily life long before anyone was asked to look for her. Every searcher walking those acres believed a frightened child might still be out there. Officers prayed outside Bethel Baptist before heading into the woods. All of it rested on a timeline only 2 people could verify, and Sheriff Sawyer later confirmed that from nearly the beginning, an off-site team had been working the case from a different angle entirely. The FBI wasn't brought in early to find a wandering child. While the county searched the woods, that second team was listening to a father explain his day. His account is on camera, and it does not hold. Before his arrest, Javaya Harris sat for an on-camera interview about June 30th. Investigators studied it. Now you can. His timeline loops. Up at 5 or 6. Out of the house between 6 and 7. 3 stores. Maybe 4. Candy his daughter asked for. Sluggers and cookies. A laundromat by a Circle K, where he noticed heavy police activity and assumed it had nothing to do with him. His girlfriend's phone had no service, he said. That's why she called 911 alone. Asked directly whether Javeayah wandered off. His answer was firm. No, she didn't run away. Then he attacked the media coverage. Reports calling his daughter nonverbal, autistic. The public was searching for a child who didn't match his description of her, and it enraged him. The autism detail hadn't come from reporters. It came from the 911 call his girlfriend made. Asked how he was coping, he said the not knowing was killing him. Trauma scrambles memory. Innocent people tell looping, disordered stories on the worst day of their lives. But investigators flag a timeline like this for a different reason. A story rehearsed enough to have a shape, not enough to be airtight. He offered one more thing, unprompted. Strangers, he said, had been circling the house in the days before the report. Walking slowly, talking on phones. He'd flagged it to detectives. A lead pointing somewhere real, or attention pointed somewhere convenient. Detectives never needed to chase it, because according to the arrest warrants, by the time this man sat on camera describing the not knowing that was killing him, there was nothing he didn't know. On the morning of July 4th, Sheriff Marty Sawyer stepped to a podium and delivered what he called the hardest announcement of his career. More than 3.5 decades in law enforcement. The evidence led investigators to one conclusion. Javaya Harris was dead, and had been for about a month. That same morning, both parents were arrested. Homicide by child abuse. Both of them. For Herring, one more. Filing a false police report. Under South Carolina law, the homicide charge carries 20 years to life, and it doesn't require proving a single planned act. A fatal injury, followed by a failure to seek help, is enough. Keep that structure in mind. It's exactly the shape of what the warrants would soon describe. The next day, both stood for bond hearings before Magistrate Judge Ronald Thornton. Neither had a lawyer. Herring told the judge she earned $1,300 bi-weekly. Too much, the court ruled, to qualify for a public defender. A magistrate can't set bond on a homicide charge, so both stayed in custody. Their newborn, days old, went to a family member after the Department of Social Services stepped in. That Sunday night, Aiken held a vigil in the alley for a little girl most of them had never met. This is Black Homicide Files. And if you want cases like this told from the record, warrants and hearings and verdicts, not speculation, subscribe now. This case has a court date, and we'll be there. Because on July 6th, the warrants went public, and the story those two parents told the world did not survive the first page. The warrants state that Javeayah suffered an injury from physical abuse at the hands of her mother, Mitchell A. Herring. Later reporting specified a head injury. The warrants state that neither parent sought medical attention afterward, and they state that both parents confessed. The statutory language, extreme indifference to human life, is the precise standard for homicide by child abuse in South Carolina. Prosecutors aren't required to reconstruct one deliberate act on one specific day. They can build the case on a window of time, an injury, a decision not to call a doctor, and everything that followed. The false report charge carries its own weight. It isn't an allegation that Herring failed to report a death in time. It's an allegation that the 911 call itself, the call that launched 200 responders, was a deliberate act of deception from its first word. The same day, Authorities revealed Herring had admitted to disposing of her daughter's body. Where? They wouldn't say. That admission reframes every prior scene. The detailed description down to the beads. The father's on-camera grief. The month neighbors stopped seeing a child on their street. Prosecutors now allege the entire search was theater, launched by a report both parents knew was false, sustained by two people watching a county look for a girl who was never in those woods. On July 7th, investigators went back to the house on Hillsborough Street. Crime tape, the county coroner on scene, crews digging through the wooded lot beside the home into the night. A law enforcement source told local media they weren't looking for a body there. They were looking for evidence, because the body search had already moved. 80 miles northeast, in a county most Aiken residents had no reason to think about, boats were being turned away from a public ramp, and nobody would say why. For 3 days, multiple agencies worked a wooded stretch near Debutary Creek in Fairfield County, sealing off a boat ramp at Cedar Creek Reservoir. No explanation, no press access. On July 9th, Sheriff Sawyer called a press conference. Dozens of his staff stood behind him, wearing pink ribbons and pink ties. Javeayah's favorite color. At times, he could not finish his sentences. Some of Javeayah's remains had been recovered from Cedar Creek Reservoir. DNA testing by the state crime lab confirmed them consistent with the biological child of Javaya Harris and Michelle Herring. What Sawyer described next, he described only in the language necessary. And so will we. Investigators found extensive, deliberate efforts to destroy and conceal evidence after Javeayah's death, including the use of corrosive chemicals, before her remains were placed in the reservoir on June 8th. Because of those efforts, the sheriff said, her full remains will likely never be recovered. 37 years in law enforcement, he said, and he had never heard of anything so horrific. Then he said something sheriffs do not say at podiums. He would not refer to the two suspects as mom and dad, or mother and father. They don't deserve that title. That afternoon, prosecutors filed a new charge against both: destruction and desecration of human remains. Bond denied again. Flight risks. The cause of death still hasn't been released. The investigation is still open. But the June 8th anchor date means Javeayah likely died in late May, or the first days of June, while a nursery was being prepared, while work shifts were being clocked, weeks before her mother described her to a dispatcher, playing by the chicken coop that evening. Which leaves the question no warrant has answered. What happened inside that house, in the weeks nobody was watching? On the night of July 9th, hundreds gathered at an event center on Shiloh Heights Road. Candles, balloons, stuffed animals piling up outside the family's home. Organized by two local friends, Christy Pace and Tonya Kitchings, with a message from Pastor Joshua Stallings of Remnant Ministries. Almost no one there had ever met Javeayah. They came anyway. Here is where the case stands. Javaya Harris and Michelle Herring sit in custody without bond, each charged with homicide by child abuse and destruction and desecration of human remains. Herring also with filing a false police report. First court appearance, September 18th. The homicide charge carries 20 years to life. And it must be said plainly, charges are not convictions. The warrants, the alleged confessions, the findings from that reservoir, none of it has been tested before a jury. That test is coming. The sheriff's office is still collecting. Anyone with photos, video, or documents connected to the case can submit them through its public evidence portal, because the weeks of June remain a hole in the record that only two people can fill, and so far, only a courtroom will make them. Consider the speed of this. A report on a Tuesday night. Federal agents by Wednesday morning. Homicide charges in 5 days. A recovery in 10. Cases in this space stay open for years. This one collapsed into a prosecution almost as fast as it became a headline. Because once the 911 call cracked, the evidence pointed one direction and never wavered. What can't be argued is this: a 4-year-old who loved pink, who talked to everyone she met, who should be starting kindergarten next year, is gone. The people charged with protecting her are the ones charged with her death. And a community that didn't know her name in May was lighting candles for her by July. Black homicide files will be in that courtroom on September 18th, and will follow this case through verdict and sentencing. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because Javeayah's story isn't finished, and neither is the pursuit of justice for her. Rest easy, Javeayah.